And joining me now is Republican North Carolina Congressman Pat Harrigan. He serves on the House and Armed Services Committee and is a U.S. Army Special Forces veteran who served multiple tours in Afghanistan. Congressman Harrigan, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. I'm sure you've been listening to some of the previous conversations. I know you have a different opinion about all of this going forward, but I want to bring up something that President Trump said during that press conference. He did not rule out the potential of more American boots on the ground in the future in Venezuela. Is that something you would support?
Well, first and foremost, I think we've got to give credit where credit's due on this. This was an absolutely unprecedented military operation. And if you compare what happened 2 nights ago to what happened with the fall of Afghanistan or President Biden allowing Russia to invade Ukraine, we fundamentally have a different military. We have just laid out an extremely effective chilling effect on our adversaries all around the globe. From that perspective, I do think that it was a little concerning to folks when they heard the president talk about he's okay with boots on the ground. That seems a little bit different, a little bit of a right pivot. I think you have seen the administration clarify that today, but there's certainly clarification that needs to happen based off of the press conference that happened yesterday.
So in terms of that clarification, because the other thing, the president sort of ruled out the opposition party as having a role in this, and then the current vice president who assumed power in Venezuela is handpicked by Maduro. How does a transition like this take place into a new government that the United States can trust without Americans there helping and securing this new interim government?
Yeah, I don't have the answers to that right now. And I think that, as I said yesterday during the press conference, I think we went from hey, we're going to stop drugs from coming into this country, which is something that all of us as Americans broadly agree with, right? We know that we have failed in the last 50 years to make any meaningful difference in the war on drugs, and are willing to give President Trump a lot of latitude to try to change those outcomes for the American people. And striking narco-terrorist boats on their way to the United States or other countries, I think most Americans are actually okay with. When it then comes into actually taking Maduro captive, right? Look, he's an indicted guy. For the last 6 years, he ran a narco-terrorist dictatorship that fundamentally collapsed Venezuela. He trafficked drugs that killed Americans, and he invited hostile powers into our hemisphere. I also think most Americans are behind that. It's a 78% issue with Latinos. Pretty dang clear. It caused a ton of problems for our country, like mass illegal migration, and we cannot overstate how impactful that foreign power influence was in undermining our global national security. So I think everybody's good to that point. I think at the press conference yesterday was a little bit of a right turn where a couple things were said like, hey, we're going to run the country. We're okay with boots on the ground. Those things need to be clarified by the administration, and a clear plan needs to be laid out by the administration on how we're going to move forward. And there does need to be robust oversight by Congress at this point.
And I'm sure you heard in some of our previous conversations, many folks raising questions about the legality of this or the precedent of going into another country and capturing or extracting its leader. And then you, as a member of Congress, the war powers, do you feel like you need to be asked for congressional approval, especially going forward if more troops may be required?
If more troops are required, there's no question about it. But what's happened up to this point was fully legal. And I think most people, particularly my Democratic colleagues in Congress, just fail to understand the authorities that come with different titles that the president had that Congress has already authorized. This was a Title 18 federal criminal law. This was a law enforcement operation supported by the DEA. That's Title 21. When you add the military into it, and yes, even though there was a kinetic element to it, that still all falls under Title 50. That's our intelligence covert action capabilities. And when we're going after the capture of a specific individual, supporting a law enforcement style operation, when we're advancing on an intelligence or covert action objective, or very specifically, and I absolutely think that this is what President Trump was trying to do with a targeted set of strikes, was to avoid overt armed conflict over a protracted period with Venezuela. That is classic Title 50. Title 50 operations do not need to notify Congress. Now, you do have to notify the Gang of Eight. That didn't happen. That's something I've talked about over the last 24 hours. The administration needs to clean that up. But fundamentally, it doesn't change any of the outcomes. They're not asking for permission for Congress. They are notifying Congress of what's going to happen. And I absolutely agree with President Trump that he has a trust problem with many members of Congress. We've got folks who are Somalia first and not America first.
But what about the precedent part of it? I mean, what if Putin goes in and takes out Zelensky, or China goes in, to the leader of Taiwan? You could see this sort of thing happening around the world, and other leaders trying to justify that using the U.S. case with Maduro as an example.
Yeah, this has already happened with weak American administrations like Joe Biden's, right? I mean, the only reason that Russia invaded Ukraine, and oh, by the way, Putin tried to kill Zelensky a half a dozen times, is because of the disastrous withdrawal that we had from Afghanistan. And then he basically told everybody that we weren't going to do anything if Putin had just a minor incursion into Ukraine. We've got to stop the weakness. That's exactly what President Trump did with the operation 2 nights ago. We fundamentally have put our adversaries on notice around the globe that these type of shenanigans will not be tolerated. The U.S. has unprecedented capabilities that we will deploy if we need to for our strategic objectives.
All right, Congressman Harrigan, again, thank you for your time. And in the steps ahead here, we'll wait to see if the White House reaches out, as you've asked for congressional approval, if they do, in fact, require some boots on the ground in Venezuela. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.